Welcome to Party Street. Today we are going to discuss about the English Reformation. It is actually a debatable issue that whether the English Reformation was an act of the state or not. It is true that this Reformation movement was started during the reign of Henry VIII, and there were some issues, some of which was personal, resulted serious conflict between the papal power and the monarchical power in England. So we should first concentrate to the king's great matter. After the death of Prince Arthur, elder brother of Henry VIII, the then King of England, Henry VII, forced Henry VIII to get married with Catherine of Aragon, widow of Arthur. But for this marriage, a special permission of Pope Julius II was needed, and Julius granted it under political pressure. Actually, Spanish Princess Catherine was a living political issue and symbol of England-Spain friendship. But after marriage, one after another miscarriages occurred, and after 1516, Mary was the only heir of Henry VIII. In that situation, when Catherine was 40 years old, Henry wanted to divorce her. In the meantime, Henry fallen in love with Anne Boleyn, and Anne became pregnant. So it was an emergency to divorce Catherine. But the Pope could not grant it because divorce was not allowed in the Catholic Church, and also due to the fact that the troops of the Spanish Emperor were in control of the city of Rome, and the Pope could not go against him. Henry became desperate and decided to take matters into his own hands. Through a subservient parliament, which is also called the Reformation Parliament, which sat from 1529 to 1534, he served all relations with the Pope. Under the guidance of Thomas Cromwell, the Parliament passed several acts against the papal authority. But it was not the only reason behind the Reformation in England. There was a political, economic, and religious perspective of the Reformation. One can easily trace the root of enlightenment from the reign of Henry VII, when the so-called new monarchy became strong. At that stage, emergence of a nation-state resulted the rise of nationalist ideology, in which state power is the supreme power and the king became the supreme head of the newly emergent state authority. G.R. Elton argued that this situation was contradictory to the supranational character of church. According to the theory of national sovereignty, the state wanted to establish its control over the church. The state wanted undivided loyalty of the people. Tudor monarchy, for the first time, refused to accept the divided idea of loyalty. Henry VIII announced that the King of England never had superiors on earth. There was also an economic background to the English Reformation. The canon laws of England were in according to the Roman laws, and as a result of that, various types of appeal cases were transferred from England to Rome. It was actually a big source of income of the Roman Church, and also a process of drainage of wealth from England. On the other hand, the English Church had huge property, and the Church did not pay any tax to the government. But England faced a serious economic problem, and in that situation, this huge wealth was useful for the royal treasury. The papal power also became influential in the field of international trading activities because the joint stock companies of Florence and Lombardy were acting as the papal agent to collect the revenues and to invest it in the international trade. As a result of that, in England, the English merchants were also challenged by the other merchant communities. In this context, Henry VIII initiated the Reformation movement and the dissolution of the monasteries to acquire their properties. Henry redistributed the acquired land among the new elite class, who appeared later as the new bourgeois class or gentry. G.R. Elton explained the English Reformation as an act of the state. One view suggests that the English Reformation came from above and the changes were enforced from the center by deliberate governmental action, beginning with Henry VIII's action. The second explanation suggests that the Reformation had religious rather than political roots and arose from below. These writers see links between the Lollards in the time of Wycliffe and the early Protestant reforms and suggest that the atmosphere for the reforms created by them led to rapid advance of the Protestant movement at the popular level. Another view suggests that the movement was initiated not by any religious reformer but by the king himself with the support of the parliament. Through a subservient parliament, which is also called the Reformation Parliament, which sat from 1529 to 1534, Henry VIII served all relations with the Pope. The Act of Annats prohibited the English Church from sending any part of their income to the Pope, and the Act of Appeal removed the English Church from the jurisdiction of the papal courts. In 1534, with Parliament's approval, Henry declared himself the supreme head of the English Church. However, it is worth noting, as A.G. Dickens points out in his book The English Reformation, that the divorce suit did not create either Protestantism or it smoothed the path of anti-papal forces. Such forces were quite diverse and lay deep in the English society, and by the 1530s they had already reached a critical stage of eruption. In 1536 and 1539, all the monasteries were dissolved and their property seized. This property was distributed or sold to Henry's loyal supporters who belonged to the lesser nobility and landed gentry. Henry thus turned the Reformation into a national movement by involving Parliament and the gentry. Recently, Christopher Hay edited a book in 1987 titled The English Reformation Revised from the Cambridge University, and he just echoed the viewpoint of Elton from a different angle. According to him, the English Reformation was actually an initiative taken by some parliamentarians to fulfill their own interest. As a result of that, later Anglicanism was created through mixing the Reformation ideology and the traditional Catholic ideology. Dickens argued that England was different from the European continent, and as a result of that difference, the control of the Roman Church in England was not much strong. So it was easy for the state to reform the church, and the common people took it easy. He traced the existence of anti-clericalism in the northern part of England. He argued that Catholic doctrine was popular in England even before few days of Reformation. But if so, then there was a strong probability of popular revolt against the state during the Reformation. He just avoided this question, but Dickens explained it by tracing the existence of anti-papal ideas in England. Henry's Reformation began as a political act for personal reason and was in no way Protestant. The 6 Articles of Religion of Henry retained all the Catholic doctrines and practices but denied papal supremacy. Protestants as well as Catholics who refused to recognize Henry's supremacy were severely persecuted. So it was an act of the state, but not fully, because we cannot ignore also the existence of anti-clericalism as an important factor in the eve of Reformation movement in England. So this is the end of our today's discussion. Subscribe our channel, like our video and comment. Listen to our podcast episode. Follow our official Facebook page, Twitter handle and Instagram. For any query, feel free to mail us. For details, see the description.